we're here to talk about the Carolina Panthers. So this may not be like a team that's like, whoa, like, these are going to great team to break down here. But, it's an intriguing squad, in my opinion, right? You got Frank Reich, former Panther, used to be a quarterback for Carolina in 1995. I think he played 3 games, like a couple touchdowns, a couple picks, nothing spectacular. Now the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. They were super aggressive, making the trade to move up to 1 with the Chicago Bears. This time last year, a lot of assets on the squad. Christian McCaffrey and, Christian McCaffrey, of course, been one of the best players in football at his position in fantasy football, traded to San Fran last year. So they changed the guard there at the running back position, traded their number 1 wide receiver in DJ Moore, which I thought would open up for Terrace Marshall. Maybe we can get into him in a little bit later on, potentially. But this is a team now that has Bryce Young at the quarterback position, number 1 overall pick. A lot has been made of his size. Miles Sanders coming off a career year in Philadelphia. Jonathan Mingo is a wide receiver. I think we were together at the NFL draft on our FTN Network YouTube page when he was selected by the Panthers. Adam Thielen is on the team. DJ Chark. Hayden Hurst is a new addition to the squad as well. They got a lot of new additions on this Carolina team. What do you make overall of their team? We can get into their fantasy assets in a little bit, but what do you make of some of the I don't know if there's a team, Scott, across the league that is looking this different on offense compared to a year ago.
Yeah, to me, it is a little bit encouraging. It does sort of seem like there's a little bit more plan to what's been going on. I really feel like during the Matt Rule era, like they were making all of these like small improvements, but it was still very much the college team building mindset where, hey, like Teddy Bridgewater is going to make us a little bit better than we were before. Sam Darnold's going to make us a little bit better than we were before. It's a big risk to draft or to trade for and then draft Bryce Young, but at least it's the kind of shot where if it works out, it feels like the team could be building toward the future. And they've been building much more from the line, kind of the inside out old school philosophy where some of these cheaper veterans at wide receiver in the skill positions, to me, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if it's going to help you from betting on the overs for 2023 per se, but yeah, I think it's a good plan. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Hey, do you think it was the right call to take Bryce Young at 1? Was that your number 1 quarterback in the draft? Would you have gone CJ Stroud? I was kind of a CJ Stroud guy.
I'm a big Anthony Richardson guy. For me,
would you have taken him first overall?
I would have. So This is maybe a little bit of the Cam Newton halo effect of how fun it was to watch him be the centerpiece of your team. But like unquestionably the best athlete at the position, really big, really great arm, all of those things. To me, his poor accuracy was a bit overstated because 1, Florida receivers can't catch the ball. And 2, he threw a disproportionate number of his passes downfield where you have a lower expected catch rate. That was Cam Newton's whole deal before he hurt his shoulder where like, yeah, his numbers were bad too, but he was throwing the ball 20 yards downfield all the time. And so I think from a real world perspective, not that poor accuracy relative to the other guys, just an aggressive mindset that I really like.
Do you have any? I think I believe Richardson has the highest ceiling of the 4, including Will Levis in the conversation. Yeah. Are you worried about the height when it comes? Because that's all that's talked about. I mean, you don't see a quarterback go first overall with, that small, Scott.
It's definitely unusual. I'm growing less concerned by the height. Still very concerned about the weight, which we can get into. But with the height side of things, I've been doing some research on this. The average snap-weighted height of quarterbacks has dropped by a full inch over the last 10 years. So in one way, we've been going that way. And looking at some of the advanced charting data that we have at FTN, like looking at routes run and stuff, over the last couple of years, the quarterbacks that are 6 feet and under have been throwing to the same percentages on all the route types as the guys that are 6 feet and over. There's a lot of diversity on who the names are with guys like Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. And it's like, there's some kind of weird mishes and matches there, but there doesn't seem to be anything in the data to support the idea that he can't work the middle of the field. Like he can't throw certain types of routes. I think that the height isn't necessarily the restrictive piece there. So, I feel a little bit more optimistic about the height than I would have a few weeks ago. It's just the weight, the fact that he's so small. He's like 40 pounds smaller than me. Like I'm really worried that he's going to get hurt, but I think he can be successful if he can stay on the field.
And we do believe he's going to be the week 1 starter. I mean, they opened up camp with Andy Dalton taking first team reps. And just recently, of course, they transitioned into him taking first team reps. I do believe that he's going to be the week 1 starter for this team. There's no question. What do you think about Frank Reich and his coaching abilities? Because he's done some good things, He did some good things with Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, had some MVP votes. En route to the Super Bowl, of course, he blew out his knee, unfortunately for him. And then, he did some great things with Nick Foles coming in. And I just feel like in Indy over the past little little bit. It's kind of like Carolina, like you said, patchwork here and there to try to, they lost Cam Newton, and in Indy they lost Andrew Luck, and they've just been trying to figure it out for a couple of years over there. And then they got their guy Richardson. But what do you make of Frank Reich and really him coaching up to the strengths of Bryce Young?
Yeah, I feel like the Colts' problems were a lot more personnel related and like poor injury luck related, things along those lines, not about the X's and O's specific to the coach. I feel like Reich is a good coach, and I feel like he has a chance to be really successful. The most interesting thing of it is that Reich himself, you mentioned he was a former Panthers quarterback, but he's 6'4", like classic traditional pocket passer. And every quarterback he's ever used has been 6'4" or 6'5". Not just Wentz. He brought in Phillip Rivers to be that for that random year for the Colts. Like, even Jacoby Brissett is 6'4". People may not realize
Matt
that.
Ryan's
so like,
probably 6'4" too.
He is. So like, we're going from there to 5'10", like maybe, like if we're being generous. It's I think it's great. I love to see like an older coach learning some new tricks here. I feel like that's probably a sign of development and growth.
Yeah. It's going to be tough, man. 5'10" to look over those offensive linemen. You talk about the weight too, taking sacks, protecting him is key. I remember just a couple years ago, Carolina drafted all defenders. Like this is a team that just,
Matt Rule's first draft.
Yeah, that's right. It was just, I think 6, if memory serves me right, 6 defenders they took, and it was pretty rare to see a team do that. And yeah, they went all in on defensive players. Some worked out, some certainly didn't. But like having the offensive line protect Bryce Young, I mean, that's not breaking any news, Scott. Protecting a young quarterback. We can get into Miles Sanders a little bit. Maybe they lean on a veteran back in Miles Sanders early on in his playing career. Do you want to roll through the schedule? Like, we may not feel like it's a good exercise at 7.5 wins to go over, but this is what I want to do with all of I did see a golf question there, Caden Luke. I'm sorry. Maybe we can get that towards the end of the show. We just did finish with Alex Blickel. Reach out to Alex Blickel1 on Twitter. He's really good. And maybe I'll get him to come on the show after and answer that question, or we can get to it a little bit later on. But I just want to do this with all my guests, like kind of roll through the schedule and like we can chalk up a winner or a loss. It's kind of a fun exercise. Things will change. Let's walk through this. Week 1 at Atlanta. Win, loss.
Falcons are going to win that division.
Ooh, I like it. That was my question next. Falcons are going to win the division. Okay, hold that thought. Week 2 at home, their home opener inside the division against the Saints.
That's a loss.
In Seattle, week 3.
Loss.
That's a loss. Minnesota at home.
That's a win.
Oh, okay, nice. Minnesota still frauds, I take it. Week 5 in Detroit to take on the Lions.
That's a loss.
That's a loss. Week 6 in Miami.
Loss.
Yeah, figured that. They got the bye week 7 out of the bye. They're at home against the Texans.
That's a win.
That's a win. They're at home again against the Colts.
Win again. That may be Anthony Richardson's first start.
Okay, week 9. So you're in the camp that it's not going to be Anthony Richardson. It's going to be maybe Gardner Minshew to start.
I think at least a month of Minshew, yeah.
Okay. I mean, he knows the system that Steichen, being from Philadelphia, they're familiar with each other. So I dig that call. That'd be fun, right? Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, back to back, right out of the
flex that the Thursday night right now. Just do it.
Just do it. Okay. Well, they are week 10 Thursday night football in Chicago.
Flex that out. That's a loss.
That's a loss. Okay. Week 11 at home to the Cowboys.
Big loss.
Week 12 in Tennessee.
Win.
I
think the Titans could have a fall from grace. Look at their early schedule. It's really brutal. So they actually could be down enough to actually unload some of their players at the trade deadline. Maybe Derrick Henry even, if they're sitting at like 1-5 or whatever. So the Titans may be looking at Levis and a full-on rebuild by then.
Yeah, and I don't think that they should sign Hopkins. They're just so far away. I don't think that would be a great fit. Okay, so Tennessee lost week 12. Agree to. We'll probably see Levis at that point. Week 13 in Tampa.
Win.
Week 14 in Nolans.
Loss.
Week 15 against the Falcons again.
Loss again.
Loss again because the Atlanta's win the division. Green Bay, week 16 at home.
Loss.
Oh, yeah. This team is not going over 7.5. Week 17 at Jacksonville. Another loss.
Well, that could be a sneaky win if the Jags have already clinched that South. So let's throw a win in there just for fun.
Let's give them a win. Yeah. Let's give them a win. So they're at 6 Ws. They wrap up at home against Tampa Bay, which is a winnable game.
win.
But
They're
we
getting back
still
to
don't have
7,
the over.
getting back to 7 wins, not getting over 7.5. I think that sounds pretty right. The
I
key
think that sounds
there,
fair too.
like, I think it's pretty clear painting the picture with some of the really bad teams on the schedule and a lot of the teams being in the same division, that the
Right.
Panthers do have a very easy schedule this year. And by DVOA, they actually have the 4th easiest projected schedule. The trick is that everyone else in the division, because they're all playing each other and because they're playing the AFC South and playing the NFC North, which doesn't have Aaron Rodgers anymore, it's all really easy. New Orleans has the easiest, Atlanta the 2nd easiest, and Tampa Bay the 6th easiest projected schedule. This division, it's really sad, and it's got a sad, easy schedule this year.
I was looking for the easy, hard schedule, Quan, that we had. I think I just removed it from the back end, but Scott just gave it to us beautifully. And that's what I said. Yeah, that's what I said a couple weeks ago. It's just like, well, I mean, well, he does have it. But you see like some of the teams inside the division here, and it's just like not a great division. Walk me through the Falcons. Walk me through, since we're on the NFC South and we're doing Carolina, we'll break here in a minute, but walk me through why you like this team to win the division, because there may be some, Falcons fans watching because of, how familiar they will be with Carolina and the division. What do you like about Atlanta?
Well, this is not a pro Desmond Ridder take, I hate to tell you. I just honestly feel like Arthur Smith has built an offense that is as close as we can get, except maybe Kyle Shanahan division, to being quarterback proof, with the heavy reliance on the play action passing game that I think can work with even a below average starter at quarterback. And so much of it comes down to the fact that the Falcons, I think, are just more motivated to win than either the Panthers or the Bucs are. The Panthers more interested in the long term in developing Bryce Young to hopefully be a good team in 2 or 3 years. Tampa Bay being just kind of stuck. They invested so heavily in the Tom Brady run, and now that that's over, they have major cap issues. They don't really have any easy opportunities to improve their team. They have even worse than the Falcons at quarterback situation, with maybe Kyle Trask being the starter there. If Baker Mayfield couldn't cut it for the Panthers, I'm not sure that the Bucs are going to be the answer to that answer either. So really, to me, it's just the Falcons are competing with the Saints. And while the Saints have been amazing on defense for like a decade now, that defense is getting really, really old. So I'm concerned. And, Andy Dalton was fine last year. So I'm not sure how much of an upgrade Derek Carr can even be for them at quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe slightly, but it's not like it's world breaking. Like, I do like the Saints, but I told a buddy that I would not be shocked if it was the Falcons, and he's kind of drinking the Saints Kool-Aid at the moment. But just the way the offensive line, I think, is underrated. You mentioned, Bijan with running attack, and I think we can expect a little bit more from Kyle Pitts. Like, I know expectations are extremely high, but he's a good player, and he's going to be a great player in the NFL. And Drake London he's a definite alpha wide receiver who popped off really when Desmond Ridder took over under center.
Kyle Pitts was 6th among tight ends in yards per route run last year. He was good. His issues were all fantasy related. So people
fantasy related,
get over that.
Right.
Fine.
Yeah, he's going to be just fine. He is a complete mismatch. He's going to be a great player in the league. Let's take a quick break, Scott, if you don't mind. Got to dive into some of the weapons. We'll switch gears a little bit from a team standpoint into like a fantasy standpoint, where some of these guys are going. Which wide receiver you like to take in Carolina, and really what to expect from Miles Sanders. Can he be a bell cow back in Carolina? How much will they lean on him? We'll talk about the backfield and a few of their assets here next. Keep her locked. We'll be back in just 2 minutes. The Falcons, by the way, are plus 250 to win the NFC South, and they're plus 125 to make the playoffs. And I think if they get in, they're probably getting in via winning the division. Although the NFC is completely wide open, I suppose they could sneak in as a wild card team there. But I really do like Seattle. We went through Carolina's schedule. We gave them 7 wins. But let's talk about them from a fantasy standpoint, some of their assets. We talked a little bit about Bryce Young there. These are ADPs from Underdog Fantasy. Of course, things will change just a little bit, but this is the average draft position. I tweeted this out earlier, and somebody's like, whoa, why do you have Mingo ranked ahead of Thielen? These aren't my rankings. These are just average draft position over at UnderdogFantasy.com. Best ball drafts. Bryce Young, QB 22 on average, 236th overall. Thoughts on him from maybe a super flex standpoint? Have you taken any shares on him in best ball as like a late stack? I think for me personally, what I want to say is I agree with you on Anthony Richardson. I think in a rookie only, in a super flex, Anthony Richardson should be the first quarterback off the board. And for me, 2 super flex rookie only drafts so far, and Anthony Richardson has been the second overall pick behind Bijan in all of those drafts so far. Talk to me about Young from a fantasy standpoint, best ball, super flex, any interest?
It makes a little bit more sense from best ball, because I do think he's going to start from week 1, which I'm not sure I feel that way about a lot of the other rookie quarterbacks, but I just don't necessarily love him from a fantasy perspective this year. It's probably a pretty good offensive line for a rookie quarterback, but I think that's going to mean more handoffs than like great success for Young. And Young, relative to some of the other rookies, in particular Richardson and Levis, doesn't run as much, and I think may run even less in the NFL given how small he is. He's going to need to keep himself safe. Like, he's athletic, but I think that's more about extending plays within the pocket and throwing than it is about running, and that's just not really fantasy friendly from a strategy perspective.
Will they lean on Miles Sanders then? Coming off a career season, got paid, double-digit touchdowns, over 1,000 yards after scoring 0 touchdowns 2 years ago in the NFL. Is this a guy that's going to battle with Chuba Hubbard, or do you feel like he could be close to a bell cow running back? Can he get back to where he was when he broke out as a rookie, catching like 40 plus passes? Do you think that's a possibility?
From a receiving perspective, I do. So his targets have fallen from 63 as a rookie to 52, 34, and 26 the last 4 seasons. And you're like, yikes, like clearly he didn't make it work as a receiver, but he actually had a 20% receiving DVOA rate as a rookie, which is really, really good. I think that's just the Jalen Hurts offense that he was playing in, and that wasn't something that they asked from him. The Panthers, I think, will ask it more, and I think Sanders is an effective receiving back and will get that work. Probably enjoy a 70-30 type of split over Chuba Hubbard in particular. My only issue here is that Sanders, like so much of his rushing success last year came because of the Eagles. Number 2 in run block win rate. Sanders averaged 2.73 yards before contact. That was 3rd highest among running backs. The Panthers can run block, but it's just not going to be as good as it was for the Eagles last year. So Sanders isn't going to be the same unbelievably efficient player he was last year.
Yeah, when he broke onto the scene, he was like 1 of 4 players with like 40 grabs, 500 receiving yards, 800 rushing yards, 4.5 yards per carry, and there with like Dalvin Cook and CMC and Alvin Kamara. You're right. I mean, it hasn't been used that way. I think he could be. What about the weapons in the receiving game? Mingo is a guy that they just drafted. Adam Thielen is a veteran wide receiver. I don't want to say he's fallen off, but a rough couple of years. He's been a touchdown machine, really, with Kirk Cousins over the past couple seasons. A big red zone target for him. DJ Chark, another guy, can stretch the field a little bit, has had some issues staying healthy. And then there's other guys on this team, like Terrace Marshall, Laviska Shenault. Maybe one of those two can break out as like a potential sleeper in your opinion. But if you had a choice, you're sitting there on the board, you really can only pick one of these guys if you want. Which way do you go?
For me, it's Thielen. You said he's fallen off, but it really hasn't been that steep a decline. Averaged 15 games over the last 3 years, averaged 70 catches, 789 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So it's a profile that leans into the touchdown scoring. And yeah, it probably won't be as good as it was in Minnesota. But Thielen is 6'2" and 200 pounds. I think people assume by his, let's say, appearance that maybe he's not that big or athletic of a wide receiver, but he actually is. And I think he has this like weird ability to get open in short areas in the end zone. It's just like a knack of where the holes in the zone are. And it's really worked for him. He's always averaged really good like red zone target rates or expected touchdown rates in the red zone. So to me, he's the target on the Panthers as both consistent target volume and the touchdown upside, whereas everybody else I think has one or the other, but not both.
Yeah, lean with a veteran wide receiver. I dig it. Is there a sleeper? Like if Chark goes down, is there somebody else that can step up and garner any attention from a fantasy standpoint? Is there anything? We'll say this. We'll get you out of here on this. Any final thoughts on this Carolina team from a fantasy football standpoint?
I guess some of the preseason stuff would have you believe that Terrace Marshall and Laviska Shenault are the sleepers. Frank Reich even told reporters that he wanted to do some Deebo Samuel stuff with Shenault this season.
I did hear that.
Tell you that he probably also wants to do some Patrick Mahomes stuff with Bryce Young, and like chances are they aren't that good as players. So like I would pass on some of those sleeper options with the Panthers. Maybe look on other teams.
30 seconds. Where does Ringo rank for you off the top of your head? And like, should he be a target for people looking for a wide receiver or among rookies after those big 4 go off the board? Do you think about him, or are you going another way like Rice or Reed, or are you going to Hyatt? Are you going a different way?
I mean, I had those guys in a similar range, but I think Mingo makes sense because at 6'2" and 220, he's like that power slot guy. We've seen players like Amon-Ra St. Brown have early success with that type of build and skill set. So it's kind of weird, but I think it could be one where he hits his stride more quickly in the NFL than some other, more downfieldy type of wide receivers.